We look at about 3,000 films a year and only about 90 of them make the screen. So a lot of activity, a lot of talented people out there, and it's really cool to kind of work with them and discover some of that talent that's out there. So there's plenty of opportunity in this space.
This is the Boxoffice Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, the editorial director of Boxoffice Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. Here this week with my colleagues Rebecca Pahle and Chad Kennerk from Boxoffice Pro, and we'll be talking to Fathom Events CEO Ray Nutt in our sponsored feature edition this week, coming off of the incredible success of the Coraline 3D re-release that Fathom Events put out last weekend. We'll be going over those numbers shortly. But before we talk about rep records, we do have to talk about, let's say, a follow-up to our episode last week, where we went into the Alien franchise for 90 minutes plus. No one had seen Alien Romulus before we recorded it. At this point, everyone on our panel this week has seen Alien Romulus. Now, Chad, you weren't with us last week, so I'm going to start with you. I want to go over what your connection to the whole Alien thing is, because Rebecca, Russ, myself, huge fans. I mean, what's your vibe with it?
I definitely am a huge fan of the original Alien. Loved Aliens. I think that's kind of where my relationship with the franchise stopped until Prometheus.
That's going to be most people who saw the movie probably have a similar sort of road with
They
it.
skip the bad ones is basically what I'm hearing here. You watch the first two, skip the bad ones, you come back with the weird esoteric ones. And
exactly.
Are you an apologist of the Ridley Scott Prometheus-y?
Promethei?
Yeah.
Okay,
no,
you're into it. You'll defend it at the party. Good.
Yes,
good. We need
absolutely.
more of you in our world. Well, let's talk about reactions here, because Alien Romulus opened a little bit under what we were expecting from our forecasting panel, but still went in and I think performed decently well for a mid-August release. A $42 million opening weekend domestically for Alien Romulus. So yes, a little bit behind what we were expecting. I think we were hoping for something closer to that $50 million benchmark from Prometheus, but not bad all in all for a mid-August release.
For a mid-August release, it was initially going to go to Hulu, so that's $42 million more dollars than cinemas would have gotten, and I say again for the 18 gazillionth time on this podcast, do a rep release of Prey in cinemas. I will see it or buy a ticket every day. No,
I don't know how many of us are in that group, but I am definitely part of that.
Alien Romulus, it was that same kind of reboot, a soft reboot, a new take on an iconic horror IP. I mean, I'm really glad that Prey did so well to convince Disney and 20th Century Studios to put this one in cinemas. I think it looked great. I like I really liked Vede Alvarez's Don't Breathe. I didn't see his Evil Dead remake, but I'm definitely going to go back and check it out now.
Yeah, a parallel strand, I think, in the whole Alien universe in terms of timelines and main characters. It felt more like a remix than a sequel to me, where you had, I think, a lot of the ideas that were interesting in some of the sequels that maybe weren't well executed. And if you're curious, as you're listening to this, what those concepts that didn't really fully land, you can listen to last week's episode where we spent 97 minutes complaining about things we liked but didn't really work in prior entries in the franchise. I think they worked this time around. I was very happy with the result. Chad, were you a fan of the film?
Yeah, I was. I went to see my friends at Metropolitan Theaters and saw it in IMAX. And it's hard to believe, like Rebecca said, that this was initially meant for Hulu, because for me, it feels so like the definition of a big screen experience.
Daniel, I caught it on IMAX at Lincoln Square at AMC. Is that where you saw it as well?
So I had a Dolby ticket. I showed up to AMC in Lincoln Square right at the beginning of the showtime. I buzz in and they're like, "Hey, you're in the wrong theater. You're supposed to be watching this 30 blocks south."
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you
Times Square. I did at the beginning of the showtime, really. So I went from 72nd to 42nd in warp speed, the one train, which is the opposite of warp speed. And I got there right as the final Coke commercial before the feature starts.
We know the order well.
Well, a big thank you to our friends in cinema advertising for a longer than expected pre-show that helped me make my screening on time. So now I'm spoiled. Now I know I can live dangerously. That like 30 block span between AMC PLFs works to my advantage. I saw it in Dolby. Had a great time. Sounds great. This movie sounds fantastic. If you can watch this in an immersive audio track, it's really, really great. And I think not to give out a free plug, but because really the technology is that impressive, that HDR from our friends at Dolby is really, really good. Very silky blacks, the blue hues, the red LED lighting really pops out in Dolby Vision.
Yeah, the shadows were really, I mean, you got the sense that there was really a physical xenomorph. It wasn't what the pitfall some of the sequels fell into, of trying
Very
to do
practical
too much with bad
this
CGI.
Time.
Yeah,
not too much bad CGI, practical effects. And finally, we were asking for like a spaceship that felt lived in, not an Apple store, I think was Rebecca's line from last week. And that's what we got. I think the production design nailed it. The creature design was wonderful. And I finally get my Acid Blood sequel that I've been asking for. You have this great like narrative crutch here that you can't do much in way of killing them if you shoot them, these alien creatures that bleed acid. I always felt like, man, that's just such great potential to use it in something. Finally use in an unforgettable action sequence in the third act of the film.
Good. So the one thing I didn't love so much is there were a few callbacks that were a little too on the nose, like I don't like need someone else to say. I don't need someone else to say like, get away from her.
Yeah.
Some of those Star Wars: A New Hope type moments. But other than that,
I think the sequel delivered for fans, and we aren't expecting a bigger audience to come in for this title. As we've mentioned, the Alien sequels have always struggled keeping market share after opening weekend. 59% to 70% drops in subsequent weekends. This coming weekend is a little bit all over the place because we've got 3 new openers. None of them are really expected to challenge for any of the top 3 spots. We do expect Deadpool and Wolverine to reclaim the number 1 spot at the box office. And then we've got a trio here. I'm going to go over them quickly because I do want to go over the great bright spot that Fathom Events had with Coraline last weekend. We've got from Sony a faith-based title, The Forge. The guys behind this title, the Kennerk brothers, are, I think, the reference in terms of like high-performing, overperforming faith-based titles. We haven't heard much of this. Our forecasting's actually been impacted because I think the pre-sales have been down. The marketing campaign isn't what we usually see from this gang. So we're expecting something in, let's say, the $4 to $8 million opening weekend range. The lowest of the new openers here. And then I don't know who's going to win out on top. My money here is for the Zoe Kravitz written and directed Blink Twice, about an evil billionaire private island thriller.
I was kind of skeptical of a little bit of, first, actor doing their first directorial debut. Is it like a vanity project? But it looks good. I've heard it's good. And it's Zoe Kravitz calls all her rich, famous friends to be in a movie with her. Like, I'm
good trailer
curious.
Review numbers here, by the way. Yeah. Romeo Duchesne from our forecasting panel always brings up, hey, listen, I know there's not much buzz around this. The trailer reviews suggest a good impact here. We don't expect something huge from Amazon MGM.
But a nice late August.
A thriller to fill screens in late August, $6 to $10 million range. The same range that we have for a film that really, I think, should have been a little bit higher on our list. The reboot quill, or let's say retake on The Crow, because it's not really a remake. That film also expected to open from 6 to 10 million, but you think there was probably higher expectations for that prior to this rollout that doesn't seem to have the fans.
I have not heard any sort of word of mouth really whatsoever on this one, positive or negative, which is concerning.
A difficult year for Lionsgate, I think, still in an executive transition. We saw this, I think, at CinemaCon last year, right? We came in, we're like, well, you have Adam Fogelson making the official switch from STX to Lionsgate. A lot of executive turnover there. We don't know too much about their titles. We didn't see too much in the way of CinemaCon. I think a lot of them were announcements of productions that were coming in the coming years. So it's been a a slow year for Lionsgate. I think it's an off year, a transition year for them. I think the releases reflect that, unfortunately. But now on the positive side of things, Coraline, still in theaters. The 3D re-release rolled out by Fathom Events, having a great run over its, let's say, reintroduction into the marketplace last weekend. Rebecca, what did we see from this title?
It was a reintroduction of a reintroduction. So Fathom did a re-release of Coraline last year that became, over the course of its run, their highest earning classic repertory title. And now it has broken its own record by eclipsing last year's record to the tune of 12.5 million Thursday to Sunday, or just looking at the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're looking at a little bit under $9 million. It's really interesting, and I spoke about it with Ray in the interview that you'll hear start in a few minutes. But like you say, this is last year was 2D. This is 3D, remastered in 3D. I remember when I bought the Blu-ray when I was a kid, like it had the little cardboard glasses that you got. Like there was always consciousness that Coraline was originally supposed to be a 3D film. And you do that 3D, that work to really bring that 3D up to par. You add in some more special features, and there's no reason that you can't re-release something like Coraline. Maybe not every year, like you do Studio Ghibli. Fathom puts out their stuff every year, but there's room for repeat showings here. They're screening it over the course of a week, so you're listening to this on the day the podcast comes out. I think that's August 22nd. That is, as we're recording this, the last day it is scheduled to be in theaters under this run from Fathom. But definitely a good weekend for them. Number 5 at the box office over the whole weekend for a 15-year-old movie. And actually, Daniel, that's a great spot to stop and transition into our interview with Ray. Obviously, had to ask him about concert films, about the rise that event cinema has seen over this past couple of years. It was about time we caught up with them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to that interview, and you guys can find that right after this commercial break. Rebecca Pahle's interview with Fathom Events CEO Ray Nutt.
Celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, Fathom continues to be the recognized leader in specialty distribution and alternative content, bringing theaters a wide array of highly anticipated titles from around the world. Fathom's slate includes live concert performances from the Metropolitan Opera Live in HD series, special live events like Andrea Bocelli 30, a celebration, and the Canelo vs. Berlanga boxing match, and ongoing series, Fathom's Big Screen Classics and Studio Ghibli Fest, introducing beloved films to new audiences throughout the year. Fathom also offers faith-based content like God's Not Dead, In God We Trust, the top-selling Jesus Thirsts, The Miracle of the Eucharist, and The Chosen, which Fathom brought to screens before fans could see it anywhere else. Fathom has partnerships with the top studios and is currently working with Leica to celebrate the 15th anniversary presentation of Coraline in remastered 3D, and with Warner Brothers on the upcoming documentary Superman: The Christopher Reeve Story, a huge hit at Sundance earlier this year. Fathom, bringing unique content your guests will love year-round. Go to fathomevents.com for more details.
And I am joined here by Ray Nutt, CEO of Fathom Events. Ray, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm doing great. I want to jump right into it because there's a lot to talk about here with regards to event cinema in general and Fathom more specifically. I feel like it's been a crazy few years for the industry, but for event cinema in particular, I mean, when we're talking about these last few years of needing more content, of maybe having a smaller slate because of the strikes. I mean, it seems like event cinema was kind of made for the position that we've been in these last few years. How has the world of event cinema, I guess, changed since 2019? And has it had any effect on how Fathom operates in terms of a business model?
Oh, that's a really good question because there's a lot that has happened since 2019. And, we worked in 2019 into 2020, we worked essentially with theaters as they were shutting down going into the pandemic. And unlike other event cinema companies, that was not the case for Fathom. We actually got 2 PPE loans and an ERC credit to help us stay above water. I think we only furloughed our employees for maybe 2 weeks, brought them back and started working on strategies for whenever the theaters were going to open. And that's paying dividends at this point, as there was a lot of content that was in the can. There was some content that was being produced at that point, but coming out of the pandemic, we were in a great position to pick up and actually move into something we're calling specialty distribution now, which is above and beyond just event cinema.
I know it was the Dynasty fellow, that film. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but was that the first foray into specialty distribution, or am I misremembering that?
No, you're remembering it exactly. The film was called The Blind, and we were going to book that film for a week or two, and it ended up running about 6 weeks. So that was our first foray into special engagements under a banner we're calling specialty distribution.
I mean, over this past year, what have been some of your personal favorite success stories? I know I went to the Riff Tracks RAD event, so that's my favorite of your guys from the past year. But what about yourself?
The Chosen, that has been a great franchise for us, and we distributed all 8 episodes of season 4 last year, and that did over $40 million for us at the box office. So they're great partners. They're great to strategize with, to do different things with. We started off doing a Christmas special with them coming out of the pandemic, and people wanted to gather communally and everything. So that was a great opportunity to do that. I'm also proud of what we did with our Ghibli Fest this past year. Those films are the same films, and they just keep running over and over and over again, and the audiences just keep coming out for those. So we positioned them a little bit differently over the last year. The same exact films that we did the year before did 142% more than they did the year before, just by the way we packaged them and marketed them as well. So I'm pretty proud of what the team has done with Ghibli Fest. Of course, The Blind you mentioned, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Lord of the Rings, which was a huge success for us on the classic side. It did a lot more than we ever thought, and it had a lot to do with the distribution pattern that we established with that. We did it in a festival-like manner, and what I mean by that is we did the first film of the trilogy Saturday, the second film on Sunday, and the third on Monday, and we repeated that for the following week. And then the week after that, we actually had it remastered so that it showed in 4DX, and we did a fair amount of revenue on 4DX as well. But that type of distribution pattern was hugely successful for us, and we did about $8.4 million on the whole run. So very, very successful. Very proud of that.
I know you've in the past worked with Peter Jackson for some of his doc stuff. Was that also through Warner Brothers, or was that set that They Shall Not Grow Old?
Yeah, They Shall Not Grow Old was through Warner Brothers and Peter Jackson, and that was hugely successful as well. And I think we've had a lot of success working with Warner Brothers on different films out there. So Lord of the Rings was another one of those also.
And coming up, you have Superman, the Christopher Reeve documentary. I mean, there was not a dry eye in the house when that trailer played during CinemaCon. It was wild.
I went through an entire Kleenex box with that documentary. It was unbelievable, and we are actually opening that September 21st on a Saturday and the 25th. Very similar to They Shall Not Grow Old. But this one is a must-see. This documentary looks at his life before his tragic accident, during the tragic accident, and even afterwards. What was special to me about the doc is that he actually narrates most of it. And we all know he's gone now and everything, so it was great anticipation on his behalf to actually narrate everything. His children do a wonderful job in that, and so forth. So that one's going to be an unbelievable one, and it's a must-see for everybody. And we are partnering with Warner Brothers on that as well.
Obviously, one of the huge stories for event cinema last year, the music and concert film genre has always been such a huge part of event cinema. Last year, I feel like it just got huger with AMC coming in with Taylor Swift and Beyonce, and then they have the Usher one coming up. Fathom has been in the game of, I don't know if you would consider the Met like a concert film, the more classical opera stuff, but I feel like it's adjacent. How much juice is there left in the music concert film space? Because I feel like Taylor Swift just blew the doors off from the get-go. And
Well, let's be clear. Taylor Swift was a unicorn, so
Yeah, you can't replicate that one.
there's nobody like it, and that was a wonderful thing for the industry, obviously. And by comparison, Beyonce, one of the other biggest names in the industry, in the music industry, did well at the box office, but didn't even compare to Taylor in terms of box office numbers. So the answer to your question is, I do think there's some runway left with regard to music. But I also think that we're very proud of our diversity here and our different verticals and of our content, and that's why part of the reason we've been so successful. We have had the Met. I remember when the Met was 85% of Fathom's revenue years and years and years ago, and clearly since we've added more verticals and more genres to our content, we've seen that balance out quite a bit more. But there is runway left with music, and I can tell you that later this year, it's already been announced that we're partnering with Andrea Bocelli and Mercury Records and Impact Productions to bring Andrea Bocelli's 30th anniversary in the music business to movie theaters. And I was recently in Italy. It was filmed over 3 nights, and it's done by Sam Wrench, who's the director of the director of Taylor Swift as well.
Oh, wow.
And it is unbelievable. I would tell you, I can't wait to see how this translates to the screen. He brought in many of his friends over the past 30 years: Ed Sheeran, Shania Twain, John Batiste, David Foster, Catherine McPhee, Placido Domingo. And then he brought some stars in. Johnny Depp plays the guitar in that. He sings alongside of him. And then Russell Crowe actually sings. And then Will Smith gave a little talk as well. So there's some star power to it. And I think you're going to find that the music business is going to continue probably in the theatrical environment. But, I don't think anyone is going to make a meal out of just that one vertical. And I think that's what makes Fathom so special about the other verticals that we have as well.
Yeah, you really have a wide variety. I want to ask you, you touched on it a bit briefly earlier, but faith-based films, I feel like that's been one of your main victories over the last few years, just how much that particular vertical has blown up over the years. You mentioned The Chosen, obviously Angel Studios going on with Sound of Freedom, which feels like it's another unicorn. But it's become so much more popular as a genre over these past few years as people realize the faith-based crowd, has the desire to see these films in a communal setting. Do you still feel like it's still kind of the underutilized genre? Where do you feel like it is now compared to maybe 2019?
I think it was in the past an underserved genre, but I would tell you now that we've done a lot of research. That was part of the research that we did when COVID hit. And I would tell you that you got to know that audience, and it's not just the Chosen audience. The Chosen has been hugely successful for us, and it's added to that particular category. But there's also a lot of Catholic content out there, and there's subcategories of different faiths that are out there. So I think our team has done a really good job of researching, understanding, finding those audiences out there. And then also, you talk about underserved communities. A few years ago, we formed a church network. And what I mean by that is when we acquire some faith-based content, if it's appropriate, we'll also license it to churches that are outside a certain area of our theaters obviously being the primary area of distribution. So there's underserved communities out there that don't have movie theaters, that have great AV technology, and we license the content to them. Again, if it's appropriate and they want it, they sell tickets to their congregation and come and watch the movie. And it's been a great source of content and revenue for us as well. So we're doing a lot to service that community, those communities, I should say, out there in the faith-based area.
What are the demographics that you feel like maybe you don't have, or you have not fully reached the potential of reaching out to those audiences?
Well, I think there's a lot of room for improvement in a lot of the areas that we are. Faith is certainly one of them, and I talked a little bit about the subcategories of that. We just did or distributed a film about the Eucharist, and that related to a Catholic audience, obviously very closely. And so I think that there's plenty of areas in the faith that are, anime is certainly one that we're looking at. Original programming, that's endless, and we're focusing, as we talked about earlier, a lot on feature films versus just a 1 or 2 night event. And that category of special engagements is a huge growth opportunity for Fathom, and you'll continue to see probably more feature films like The Blind and others out there in 2024 and beyond. So we're already booking into 2025, and we're certainly seeing a lot of filmmakers out there that are bringing their film to us. We look at about 3,000 films a year, and only about 90 of them make the screen. So a lot of activity, a lot of talented people out there, and it's really cool to kind of work with them and discover some of that talent that's out there. So there's plenty of opportunity in this space.
Is that something that you've increased on these past few years? I feel like, speaking about, the changes that have come to this industry, I feel like there's much more of a desire to have independent filmmakers, independent films, not just have to go through the same old paths that films normally have to go to get to the big screen, go to festivals, get a typical distribution deal. I feel like you're another option for some of these independent filmmakers.
Yeah. We're working with a lot of people who have made their first films out there, and it's really neat to work with them, to educate them on what distribution is all about, what marketing of film is all about. And, too often times the, $50 million plus films are the only things that get recognized out there. And there's an audience for a whole lot of other film out there with these filmmakers, independent filmmakers, like you mentioned. And, not all of them, like I say, make the screen, but the ones that do, we do a lot of research on it and make sure that we can sell tickets to those movies and there's an audience for it. So the independent filmmaking community is very, very important to Fathom.
I feel like independent filmmakers don't always have that information, and it's to their detriment. It's to cinema's detriment. It's to movie lovers' detriment.
It is, and it's a relationship business as well. And, you get to know a lot of these filmmakers and you introduce them to people who do financing or do marketing or do whatever. And it's an education process, and sometimes it's a long process, but we're very patient with them. And like I said, they're very valuable to our business moving forward.
I feel like asking about money and box office I like talking about the movies, less so the receipts, but obviously it's a hugely important part of the business to help these cinemas keep the lights on. How do you explain your success, I guess, from that perspective of bringing people in? I mean, what's the value proposition that you pitch?
Well, it is the diversity of our content. There's no doubt about that. We're always looking for new things to do. Nobody's ever done all 8 episodes like we did with The Chosen of an episodic like that, and that's actually considered a television program. So, what gets me going every day when I come in with the team? Number one, the best team in the world here. There's about 40 of us that do this, and we have the best marketing people. We have the best operations people, certainly the best programming people. And they really go out and source the content and get to know, is there an audience for that? And, sometimes you have to have hard discussions with filmmakers if we don't feel like there is an audience for it. But many times we have those positive discussions with them that, we really think there's an audience, and here's what we need to do together. And it takes Fathom, it takes the support of our content providers, and it takes the support of our theater exhibitors to make an event or a film work properly and work successfully. So, if you look at what we've done year over year, 2023, we were 45% ahead of 2022 at box office revenue. And then for this year, we've had 2 record-setting quarters, the first quarter and the second quarter of this year on top of that. So things are going in the right direction. And, we've actually stopped comparing ourselves to 2019 because
it's so unhelpful. It's like people love to do it, but it's not relevant to the situation that we're in now.
No, it's not. And we're far and beyond out of the pandemic and even beyond the strike at this point. So we have to be looking forward. We have to look at the future and adjust accordingly. And I think the team here has done a really good job of that. And I attribute our success to, our team, our content providers, and our exhibitor partners as well, who have been very supportive. And by the way, we've added thousands of theaters outside of our ownership, AMC, Regal, and Cinemark, to expand where we can go. And we're also distributing worldwide at this point. The Bocelli concert will be distributed worldwide. We have worldwide theatrical rights for that. So that's another expanded opportunity for the company is internationally at this point, and it seems to be working. So a lot of opportunity out there, a lot of good film out there, and you just got to pick the right stuff for the right audience, and we'll be on our way.
And you put the work in. It's not a matter of just taking a film and popping it on the big screen. I mean, some of those special features, special add-ons really turn a film into an event. So Ray, you guys at Fathom are coming off a really great weekend with the 15th anniversary 3D re-release of Coraline. It is your highest grossing classic title, came in the fifth highest film at the North American box office over the weekend. It's a film that you've had success with multiple years in re-releasing, as you put it out last year as well. I was wondering, could you talk a bit about this film in particular and why it worked so well in Fathom's release of it?
We did Coraline last year, and who would have thought a 14-year-old stop action film that was released on a Monday and Tuesday would have done $5 million, and then brought back 2 weeks later on a Monday and Tuesday and did another $2 million. So we did $7 million on that film last year, and we went back to Leica, who produced it, and did a deal again this year because we're celebrating the 15th anniversary of it, and it's been remastered in 3D.
Well, Ray, thank you so much for chatting today. I know we've always been aligned in terms of just you need to have a diversity of content on there. You need to have variety and, put the research in. Don't just throw spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks.
We're a little bit beyond that. So, I do remember those days, by the way, where that's what this was all about. Yeah, and now we need to be a little more strategic and
you got all that data out there.
Yep,
you can use it.
And that was Fathom Events CEO Ray Nutt speaking with Rebecca Pahle. Earlier, you heard from our colleague Chad Kennerk and myself, Daniel Loria, representing Box Office Pro here on the Box Office Podcast. We'll be back once again next week with a new episode on Thursday. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and review. It's the easiest way for us to continue what we're doing. And we'll talk to you again next week.